The town of Dry Creek lay under a burning sun, its streets dusty, its wooden storefronts leaning as if weary of holding up the lives within. And it was down that main street that Clara Monroe walked, carrying a basket of supplies she had scraped her coins together to buy. She was a quiet woman, dressed simply, her beauty hidden beneath a bonnet that couldn't disguise the gentleness of her eyes. But beauty in a lawless town was a curse more than a blessing, for men with too much whiskey and not enough honor lurked at every corner. That afternoon, two ranch hands, mean and restless, caught sight of her, their laughter crude as they blocked her path, one yanking her arm while the other jeered loud enough for all to hear. "Come on, sweetheart, share a drink with us inside," the first one drawled, pulling her toward the swinging doors of the saloon. Clara's basket tumbled to the dirt, eggs breaking, flour spilling, as she twisted and begged them to stop, her cries echoing off the walls of the town, but no one moved to help. For Dry Creek was a place where fear ruled stronger than justice. With every step she was dragged closer to that smoky den of liquor and sin, her heart hammering against her ribs, her voice choking in terror, until she thought hope itself had abandoned her, until a cowboy's shadow fell across the dust, tall and unyielding, and everything changed. The doors of the general store swung open, and out strode Cole Weston, a man known for riding alone and carrying more scars than most cared to count. Yet his eyes burned with a light that promised he would never look away from injustice. He saw Clara's bonnet knocked aside, her hair tumbling as she fought desperately against the two men, and in that instant, rage and duty collided in his chest. He didn't hesitate. With a stride as steady as thunder, Cole closed the distance, his spurs striking sparks from the boards, his voice cutting through the laughter like steel. "Let her go." The men turned, drunk with cruelty, one sneering, "Mind your business, cowboy, unless you're thirsty to." But Cole's hand had already clenched into a fist, and before the insult could rot in the air, the first man staggered back with blood on his lip. The second lunged, dragging Clara tighter against him as a shield, and the saloon crowd inside stirred with excitement, sensing trouble brewing. Cole's jaw tightened, his revolver gleamed in the sun, but his eyes stayed locked on Clara's, steadying her fear. "Trust me," he said low enough only she could hear, and with a sudden move swift as a striking snake, he knocked the brute aside, wrenching Clara free from his grip. The fight had only begun, but in that moment she felt the ground solid beneath her again, for someone had finally chosen to stand. The crowd inside the saloon roared as the two men staggered through the swinging doors, Cole right behind them, his frame unshaken, his fists ready. Clara stumbled in after, unwilling to let her savior face them alone, and the smoky room thickened with anticipation as poker players tossed cards aside. Glasses froze halfway to lips, and the piano man stopped on a sour note. One of the ranch hands lunged with a broken bottle, its jagged edge flashing, but Cole caught his wrist and slammed him into a table, splintering it in half. The second swung a chair, the crack of wood echoing, but Cole ducked and answered with a punch that sent teeth flying across the sawdust floor. The crowd cheered now, no longer spectators of cruelty, but of justice long overdue. Clara pressed herself against the wall, her heart racing, torn between fear and awe as she watched the cowboy fight not for pride, not for coin, but for her. At last, both men lay sprawled and groaning, their arrogance beaten into silence, and Cole stood tall in the wreckage, his chest heaving, his knuckles bleeding, but his eyes never leaving hers. "You're safe now," he said, extending his hand, not as a command but as a promise, and Clara's trembling fingers slipped into his, her world forever shifted by the strength of a man who had fought his way through hell. To pull her back into the light, after the fight, the sheriff arrived, but his badge was nothing compared to Cole's fists and the respect he had earned that day. The men were hauled off, their pride broken, and the town, for once, dared to whisper gratitude instead of fear. Clara walked beside Cole in silence as he guided her home, the dust swirling gently round their boots, her basket abandoned back in the street, her supplies ruined, but none of it seemed to matter. On her porch, she turned to him, her voice barely more than a breath. Why would you risk so much for me?" Cole leaned against the rail, his eyes softening though his jaw stayed firm. Because no woman should face the kind of shame they tried to force on you. Because a man who can stand by and do nothing isn't worth the ground he walks on. And because he hesitated, his voice rough with something deeper. Because when I saw you fighting, I saw a strength in you most men don't have, and I couldn't let them break it. Clara's eyes filled, not with tears of sorrow, but with something she had thought long buried hope. For in his words, she heard not just protection but respect, not pity but recognition, and it lit a fire inside her she thought the world had long ago snuffed out. Days passed, and Clara's life slowly steadied, but wherever she went, she found Cole near, not hovering, not binding, but watching with the kind of care a man gives when his heart is already tethered. When the townsfolk, once silent, began tipping their hats to her instead of turning away, she knew it was because Cole's presence had shifted something greater than just her fate. It had shifted the balance of fear in Dry Creek. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the prairie gold, Clara stood outside her small home, the cool wind tugging her dress, when Cole rode up and dismounted with the ease of a man born in the saddle. He took her hand gently, the same hand he had freed that day in front of the saloon, and his voice was steady, but filled with a vulnerability rare in men like him. Clara, I don't just want to fight for you once. I want to fight for you always. If you'll let me, I'll be the man who walks beside you, not just through battles, but through every day the good Lord gives us. Clara's breath caught, her soul torn between fear of losing again and the truth she already knew, that her heart had found its home in him. She whispered, "Then I'll let you." And his lips brushed hers in a kiss as gentle as the evening breeze, sealing a promise born not in comfort, but in courage. And friends, if this story of a cowboy's courage and a woman's reborn hope touched your heart, then don't just ride off into the sunset, hit that subscribe button and stay with us for more Wild West tales where love rises out of dust, danger, and destiny.